Brent Kessel, a very successful financial advisor during the day and a yogi by night. This is a very interesting book because really there's a big dichotomy between those two extremes. As a financial advisor, it's all about getting external money in the future, whereas studying the philosophy of Eastern philosophy is more about living in the now, not needing material possessions. Money isn't really important, and just being in the now and at one with the world. Those two extremes are quite opposite, and this book talks about bringing them together and how you can create a happy life by bringing this side with this side and kind of aligning those two things. So in this book, I think there are four main takeaways that I think is important, so I'll talk about them now. Firstly, most people get this wrong. Most people try and chase money in the hope that it'll bring them happiness and long-term fulfillment. Brent says this is the wrong way around. What you should do first is focus on yourself, develop yourself, invest in yourself. So sort out things like limiting beliefs, insecurities, perceptions about the world that aren't necessarily true, deep-rooted beliefs that are holding you back. Sort out those kind of things first, because usually when you get that side sorted and you pursue your career or your profession, the money then follows. The opposite is not true. So that was one of the big key points in this book. He calls chasing after external things paying attention to your wanting mind. He says we have to be really careful not to follow our wanting mind all the time, because we end up in an endless trap of keep wanting, attaining, and then wanting something else and attaining. This is actually covered in a book called The Happiness Hypothesis as well, where Jonathan Haidt talks about how humans, we always want something more than what we have, and then we get there. We have like a temporary period of happiness and celebration, and then that becomes the new baseline. And then we have to chase more to get that fix again. In fact, there was a scientific study done fairly recently, I believe, where they looked at lottery winners and paraplegics and took their happiness levels over a period of time. So the people that just lost their limbs, the paraplegics, reported that after 6 months, before that period they suffered from a period of depression, but then after 6 months the happiness was back to normal as before the accident. With the lottery winners, they did the same thing, and the same thing was true. The lottery winners had a temporary period of time where they're happy, obviously excited, had new opportunities, new things they could spend their money on. And then after 6 months, their happiness was exactly the same as it was before they won that money. That's the problem with the wanting mind. It doesn't bring long-term happiness. We think it will. We think if we get that raise, if we get our salary to $100,000 a year, or we get that promotion, or we get that girlfriend, or we buy that car, it's going to bring long-term happiness, but it really doesn't work like that. It's like a mirage. We walk through the desert, we look for the water, we see the mirage, and then we get there and we realize it's not actually what we thought it was in the first place. So that was one of the key points that Brent raised in this book, and it's quite a big key point in self-development as a whole, but reiterated in this book. The second key point is most people with money have deep-rooted core beliefs, limiting beliefs about money that were planted during their childhood. And most of us don't really know what these beliefs are, but they are holding us back in many ways. These beliefs sit in the subconscious mind. And he says the subconscious mind is holding people back in many different ways. He's identified from dealing with all his clients 8 different types, archetypes of people with certain subconscious beliefs about money. I won't go into all of them now, but it's a very interesting read. The third point, and this is where he starts talking about, okay, what should we do? Okay, in light of all this knowledge, how should we live our life to be wealthy and happy at the same time, have fulfillment, that kind of stuff. And he talks about the middle way with money. So he says we have these deep-rooted beliefs in our subconscious mind, but we also have this financial knowledge. Let's see, what does he call it? He calls it the innate financial wisdom. This term, innate financial wisdom, is basically the conscious view that you have about money. So if I ask you, what does living a rich life mean to you? Your conscious mind would reply with the answer. So he says that with many people, their subconscious mind, their thoughts about money and future, happiness and wealth, very, very different to their conscious mind and how that replies to the question that I just asked you. And he says the middle way is all about bringing these two things into alignment. And he gives a series of exercises that you can do to bring your subconscious mind into alignment with your conscious mind. And without that conflict, that inner conflict, you'll be far more successful. The fourth point he talks about is if you have some money and you want to invest, he gives some practical advice essentially about how to go about investing in the stock market. Very big summary of this. Investing in index trackers is cheap and often outperforms most other low-risk investments. So if you want a hands-off approach, put some money into the FTSE 100, the NASDAQ, or any other market, get some exposure to different areas of the world and plan to leave it there for a long period of time. He then gives an asset allocation class for an asset allocation portfolio for somebody who wants to assume little risk and somebody who wants to assume more risk. The one with more risk doesn't include bonds, it's just 100% equities. He talks about the different allocations that you can use for that. And then he talks about risk, knowing your risk before you're putting your money into the market essentially. This is all very high level overview. If you really want to get the lowdown of this, read the book. The knowledge is kind of foundational in this. You probably, if you really want to dig deeper into this, there are other books I suggest you read, but this will give you a good foundation if you haven't invested in the stock market before. So the final thing he talks about is if you really want a happy life and if you really want to live a fulfilling life, something that stands the test of time, not like the wanting mind where you chase and keep chasing, and even if you achieve your goals, you then feel empty again, you chase further. If you really want long-term happiness and fulfillment in your life, you need to look within, find a purpose, and make sure that purpose is bigger than yourself. Maslow talks a lot about this in his book, The Psychology of Being, and I think it's a fairly well-known self-development concept. If you really want to be happy in the long term, you can't just focus on yourself, you have to make a difference to other people, and that in return will pay back to you. So, in conclusion about this book, let's see what the key takeaways are. Stop chasing external stuff. Stop chasing that raise, stop trying to get that car, stop trying to get that girlfriend. Focus within rather than focusing on the results. Fix yourself, figure out your direction, figure out your values, your beliefs, and then go after it because you want to, not because you're trying to chase external reward. Point one. Point two, bring your innate financial wisdom, that's your conscious beliefs about money and what a rich life is, in line with your subconscious beliefs about money. So that might mean identifying what your root beliefs are and doing some digging, and there's some exercises about that in the book. But you really need to bring those two together in order to get the right rewards. Otherwise you'll have inner conflict and you won't get anywhere. Number three, if you're going to invest in the stock market, invest intelligently with a good asset allocation and try and invest over the long term. Make sure you understand your tolerance for risk and invest appropriately in asset classes that correspond to that. And finally, focus on a sense of purpose, a dharma. Figure out what that is, what gets you going. Figure out what legacy you want to leave on the world. Focus on that and everything else will fall into place, including financial success.